John Robinson finds himself the prey in a deadly game of the hunter and the hunted.
John's in trouble. He can use our help.
Precisely why we should not land. Therefore...
Come down!
Let's get the fire extinguishers! And make sure everyone's strapped in! We're going down for a crash landing!
Spacepod to Jupiter. Beginning entry into planet's atmosphere.
Danger, danger. Force level building to fatal intensity. Force detector overloaded. Overloaded.
Release the alien.
Where is he?
Behind you now. Hurry! He's in there. Warning, warning.
The Earthling has finally trapped himself. There is no escape.
Next week on this channel, excitement and suspense in Hunter's Moon on Lost in Space.
Time, so let's get started. I'm Chris Seckinger. I'm one of the confounders, and I get the privilege of being one of the interviewers. And I'm so happy that you're all here, and everybody appears to be having a good time. So, yay. And I think you are all here for one reason and one reason only, and it's certainly not me. It's Ron. Ron Nation. Y'all may not know this, but Ron's one of the reasons that we're doing Stellar Fest right here. Do you know why? Because he ran the coolest convention ever in the 1980s called Dixie Train, and it is, to this day, my favorite convention of all time. And so he kind of gave me the inspiration. So. But he can talk about himself.
We're here for Marta.
No, you talk about yourself. Much more interesting.
No, I don't think so. Trust me.
Now, I've got some weird questions to ask. Ron has known Marta for decades, so he knows all sorts of stuff, and he can throw a
Don't
whole
make it
thing.
sound like that.
It is that.
We are so... I mean, I was just a child when I was going to his convention. Okay, here we go. Here's the first weird question. You graduated from Hollywood Professional School. When you did the episode Danny de Bergerac on the TV show Fame, did it feel at all familiar, or did it miss the mark when it came to capturing the feel of a school of the arts?
Well, Hollywood Professional School was quite an I think that there should be a series about it, because we had the Mickey Mouse Club members. Every kid who worked in the business was there. And we would have something called auditorium calls once a week, and we had everybody in the school performed something. Like the Romero brothers would come from Spain, and they had to go to school, so they went to Hollywood Professional. And the Musketeers, everybody sang or danced or did something, and so we called them the odd calls, not odd, but odd, and. The school was housed with very, very old people, teachers, not us, but teachers. And they were gray-haired women with little curls, and the Mrs. Mann, who was the principal, was a rather large woman with a sort of a Betty Boop kind of hairstyle. And she ran it, like Nurse Ratched. But I would write notes to my teachers and say, Marta has to go to the psychologist today. And she has to, because, she needs to talk. And my teacher would go, oh, yes, of course, and sign me off as, for the day. And I would go to various, for some reason I loved climbing the tall buildings. I liked to go to the roofs, and and there would be little ladders. I'd take the elevator up to the top floor, and there'd be little ladders I'd climb, and I'd go up to the top. These old buildings in Los Angeles, and I don't know why I would do it, but that's what I would do when I would skip school. And, so Hollywood Pro, I don't know whether that was, similar to what you're talking about, but it was exceptional in that in the personalities that inhabited or taught in the schools. I say inhabited because I felt like they lived there. They sort of just grew. They grew there, and the young people who came to it. We were all artists. We were all, child actors, really. Ryan O'Neill was my first date. His brother went to school, and Ryan would pick us up every day and take us. Actually, I took the bus for a while. It would take me 2 hours to get to and from school. Yeah, and I would have to sit at bus stops until some pervert exposed himself to me. And I told my parents, and they immediately found another way to get me to the school. And Ryan O'Neill.
Sorry.
I'm not going to say I remember you. But Ryan was funny, and his brother was Kevin, and Ryan was just delightful, and so I started dating him, but it didn't last. I broke off with him, which was, he said, Marta, I'm the only man for you. I was like 18 or 16, and I just wasn't ready to have a steady boyfriend. But yeah, high school was great. I graduated when I was 16, and I just recently had my house burned down in Palisades.
Oh.
Yeah, and one of the things that I can't believe I forgot it, but we all had to write a book for our graduation, and I wrote one on fashion, and I painted beautiful pictures of women in their own clothing, and in the early 1900s, and used the encyclopedia frequently to write the book. But yeah, it was an interesting school. I mean, when we graduated, we all carried our book with us. We all had to have it bound, and it was. It's a memory now, but I always showed. Oh, look at my book, Rob. And I was in the process, in fact, of writing a book called Birgit Stream, because I was adopted when I was 5 from Norway, and it's a book about what every child needs, and that is a safe and loving home. And I have some of my drawings on my phone, but I'm going to start it all over again. I made a mock book, and because I want it now for children who are, like in Ukraine, orphaned and have a need for a home. I don't want to go there because I'll cry and all that, but people ask me what was special about Lost in Space, and I tell them it's about family. Underneath everything, all the monsters and the stuff that we went through, it essentially is about family, and that's why it still remains popular, I think, among so many people and fans, because they were touched by it when they were children, and it was about how does a family survive the being alone, and with all these different things going on in their lives, and how do they end up being staying together and helping one another. So did I answer your?
Yeah. Look, when I saw Fame listed, I'm like, I loved Fame. Okay. And then I saw that you had gone to that school. I'm like, that was kind of like Fame. So I'm going to throw that at you. So let's see what I got next. Oh, I just watched this the other day. You worked with Bill Mooney on an episode of Alfred Hitchcock Presents called Bang, You're Dead. Were there any other cast members of Lost in Space that you worked with prior to being on that show together? He tried to kill her, by the way. You should watch that episode.
No, I don't. Let me see. I knew June Lockhart because I dated her stepson, Lance. Yeah, and we all went up to San Francisco to meet the Zellerbachs, who were the Zellerbach paper family, not toilet paper, paper. Yeah, and so I knew June from there, and I'd been to a beautiful home. She was married to an architect at the time.
Oh, that's always nice.
Yeah. So that I did know June prior to it. And Mark I'd never worked with. Angela now. Although I tested for Sound of Music.
I read that too.
Yes, and I think they thought I was too sexy, maybe. I don't know why, because I sang and danced and did all of that. And
Yeah, I don't think you would have fit in that
perfect.
family. Yeah,
Oh,
no, you were a little higher key.
Well, I was half German, so I'm half German, so it would have been perfect. But I would have loved it.
And I watched this one too the other day. Now there's certain shows that I just love, pretty much 600 or 800 different shows, but I'm a real big fan. Sure, go ahead. Can y'all shut that door back there? Can y'all right there? One of my favorite shows as a kid was Leave It to Beaver, and you worked on Leave It to Beaver on an episode called Wally and Dudley. And my question is, which of them were most like their on-screen persona, or were they totally different in real life?
Oh, Tony Dow was absolutely like he played.
I met him at the very first convention I ever vended at. That somebody interviewed him, and he was just the nicest guy.
Nice.
I'm like, he's just like talking to Wally.
Yes.
He really is.
And he was an artist, quite an extraordinary artist. He lived in Topanga Canyon, right near where I lived, and he would go hiking up in the hills and find beautiful driftwood, and then make these extraordinary figures from them. And I miss him so much. I didn't know that he played volleyball. I played volleyball. I didn't know that he sailed. I sailed. Had a sailboat.
You could have been hanging out with him.
We could
Have y'all seen the episode? Do you know whose girlfriend she played? Eddie Haskell. I mean, come on, talk about a weird man. The first time I saw it, I'm like, oh, you gotta be kidding. There's no way in real life Eddie Haskell is gonna, no. But what was he like in real life? Was he like Eddie Haskell, or was he?
Oh, actually, we did something together. I've forgotten what it was, but we were sitting in the same van and next to each other. And he was a policeman by then, and he was the nicest guy.
I can't imagine getting pulled over by Eddie Haskell.
Oh, I know.
Oh, I'm so screwed. He's gonna be so horrible.
I would have been very relieved, but anyway.
Let's see.
If I had known.
Here we go. I'm going deep here. You ready for this? Back in 1966, in an issue of N magazine, you mentioned that your parents were considering joining the Peace Corps. Did they? And did that ever interest you?
They did. They were the oldest members in the Peace Corps. They were in their 80s. So it's never too late. And I think I wouldn't join the Peace Corps unless they needed someone to teach acting. But I would work with animals. I've adopted a lot of animals, rescued a lot, found homes for a lot, fostered a lot.
You adopted Jonathan Harris's dog.
I did. I adopted Jonathan Harris's dog. And guess what his name was? What? Zachary. And he was the funniest little dog. He had never been walked, I don't think. He was, I think, part Jack Russell, part, well, I called him the dog from hell, but because he was the most nervous dog, but Jack Russell and Chihuahua. Yeah. And he had never been walked. And he peed on every corner of my furniture. I mean, no matter, I would wash them. They were fortunately slip covered. But he was so nervous. And I had 3 other dogs who sort of accepted him. But after I walked him for the first time, the next day, his little legs like this were like, oh my God, what have you done to me? Little Zachary, little beady-eyed. Oh, he was so cute. He died of a heart attack. He had a heart attack in the middle of the night, and I took him to the emergency. But while I had him, he had a good life, and he was walked and he was fed and he was loved. And little Zachary.
I think it's funny because when you think of Dr. Smith and how he behaved, and then you say that the actor owned a part Jack Russell, part Chihuahua character, I think that's as perfect a match as I could possibly dream of.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
All right, so when you traveled back to Europe and found your birth mother, you also discovered you had siblings you didn't know about. Are any of them actors?
Nope. No. I have a brother in Australia, and I have sisters in Finland and in Sweden. But none of them are actors, but I found out that my grandfather was a farmer, and he was part of a community theater in Helsinki, actually outside of Helsinki, in a rural area. And they said that actually my sister, Anneli, showed me a picture of him plowing the field and memorizing his lines from the script. And he was so yes, it's in the blood somewhere, and it always has been in my blood. When I came from Norway, as I said, I was adopted when I was 5. I got off the plane my parents were there to greet me, and my adopted parents, and they said I walked towards them like Charlie Chaplin, and they said, there's an actor, and so they immediately put me into dance, and all the kids teased me because I couldn't speak English, and I always felt like I was an outsider, so maybe that's why I adopt dogs, because they're orphans as well. And that's what my book is about. So, I don't know if that answered your question.
No, you did. Your siblings know your grandfather, yes.
I have 9 siblings. My sister, who passed shortly after my husband passed, Anneli, was she was an educator, and she was very curious about our family, and she kept finding siblings. She would go to the records, the Finns kept good records, and she would find another sister here and another brother there, and so she kept writing me saying, here's another, there's got to be a dozen. There were 10 of us, but there's surely two more out there somewhere. My poor mother was busy.
No, your adopted parents were from Michigan? Is that what you
Yes. Originally my mother was from upstate New York, and my father was from Minnesota. He had a farm, and my mother's father got off the boat, sold shoelaces on the corner of New York City, and became a very successful businessman. One of the stories she would tell is that his good friend was named Kresge, and they were investing, this, that, and they were losing money right and left. And so when Kresge came up to my father, who was John Alsasser, he said, I've got this idea, that you just put, nothing is over 5 cents or 10 cents. And my grandfather said, that'll never work. And of course, there's Kresge 5 and 9. And my mother was Bertha. She's the one who always had one foot out the door. She said she would listen to the train signals in upstate New York. She'd hear them in her bed. She'd say, where are they going? Where are they going? What is that train going? Because they were probably all going to the same place, but her imagination was that they were going to the Far East or to, eventually my parents went to the Philippines, and in 1925, and taught there for 5 years. And then later, they joined the Peace Corps. That was all my mother's doing. My father was a professor of philosophy and would have been happy to just sit in his chair and read his books and correct his papers, but But no, she said, no, Harold, we're going. Get your suitcase back.
Did he ever argue about it, or did he just pack his bags and stuff?
He'd say, you're right, Bert. You're right, Bert. And people would ask him how they were married 70 years.
Right.
And yeah, people would ask him, how, what did you do? He just said, yeah. I said, yeah, you're right. You're right, Bert. And he always, he was a quiet man and very thoughtful. But he was like my best friend. I would follow him around on our 5 acres in Michigan, and he would be plowing or digging, or he had this beautiful barn filled with old tools that I kept some of them, but he taught me to jury rig things. Now, don't do anything electrical. But otherwise, I'm handy. I mean, you can see my hands; they're workers' hands. And I love gardening, and I love fixing things, and I love. It's all a puzzle to me. And and he taught me that. And I was like a puppy dog following him around. We didn't talk, but he'd do something, and I'd watch him. And he'd look at me. Oh yeah, I see what you're doing. And my mother she was complete opposite. She was an intellectual, and my father was an intellectual, but she would stay inside, and she would be reading, or she was a raconteur. She had great funny stories to tell about her family. And yeah, that was my past. That was my upbringing.
No. You have siblings via them, were they adopted as well?
My parents?
Yeah.
No, neither of them were adopted. But they...
why did they decide to get you?
Well, why not?
No, I mean, not that it was a bad idea. It's just like, you usually find the ones that adopt have multiples that have been adopted because they couldn't have children of their own,
Well, they adopted me because they had adopted a boy who was 8 years old, and they adopted him. And they wanted a sibling for him. And because they were older, in their 50s, they couldn't adopt children in the United States. And so they were good friends with the editor of the Detroit News. And he had done, there was an article that was in his paper about a little boy who'd been adopted from Norway, the same orphan Joe was from. And so he came to my parents and said, why don't you try it? This little girl needs adopting. Because I couldn't be adopted in Norway because I was half German and half Finnish. And they, at one point, the children found out I was half German and called me the Nazi child. Terrible. Kids are awful sometimes.
I taught school.
yeah, they can be awful. And of course, the Germans were so hated that no one wanted to adopt me from Norway. So my parents started the adoption process, and it took 2 years for them to get me to the United States.
I didn't know there was a rule that they couldn't adopt after the age of 50 in the U.S.
Oh, it was just that they weren't, the social workers said, no, they're too old. And
It's so arbitrary.
Yeah, I know. Well, it probably is not the case now.
Yeah.
But it was then, and there were so many children that needed adopting. And I would tell you, luckiest person in the world to have been adopted right now.
Now, why did they decide to go to California? I assume it was your mom who made that decision.
Well, actually, it was both of them. They decided that they needed to take a break from my father to write a book on Kierkegaard, actually, for schools, for universities. And my mother took the year off from teaching, 4th grade, and it was, just something that they had wanted to do. And my dad wanted to use the USC library, and my mother had a sister in California, so we packed our Ford station wagon, and I slept all the way crying because I was 14 or 15, just turned 15, and missed all my friends, of course. But I almost immediately, this might be a question you're going to ask. I was sitting in a deli of all places in Santa Monica having spaghetti, and a man came up to me, and I went, oh. But I noticed that the group of men had been looking at me, so I sort of put on the dog, and he said, my name is James Harris. I'm producing a movie called Lolita with Stanley Kubrick, who will be directing. Are you interested in acting? And I said, I've never been interested in anything else, and which was true. And I had done community theater since, my parents, since I could speak English. And so he said, well, I think your parents should read the book, and you might want to as well. And my parents went, no. And but he introduced me to an agent, one of the top agents in Hollywood, Kurt Frankens, who represented Elizabeth Taylor, and I got an agent, one of the lower agents who represented me at the agency, and Jack Michigan, who had been a tennis pro, of all things. And anyway, I started working immediately and doing all of the shows that called for, a young woman who loved to act. And I never had any fear, which surprised me, because you get nervous as an actor, but I've always loved it so much. I think it was a way of surviving, and as a child, and sort of taking on a role, because I wasn't comfortable with language, so the language was written for me, and so I could, and then I could express myself in ways that I had always wanted to, but was afraid to, because I was, I was afraid of real life. So the stage was my saving grace, I think, in many ways.
I was watching a panel with Jerry Doyle one time, and he was talking about the whole acting process. He said it's a great job. He said they give you a piece of paper and say that.
Right.
He said you get finished saying that, and then they feed you. And if they don't need you, then you can go to a little trailer and take a nap. He said it's the greatest job ever. He said, but I really like the fact that I don't have to really think that here it is. You be this person. He said, I love that. That's absolutely fantastic. Just to be able to,
Well, you tell somebody who is terrified of getting up on a stage. My best friend, I asked her to do a reading at my wedding, and she said, I'd rather stick pins in my eyes. So no, you're making it sound simple. It's not. It's a craft.
I think
that
that
you work and work and work. You
no. I mean, I know that. I think I may find it unusual, and Anita can back me up because she was a teacher too. Standing in front of people and talking, whatever.
Now,
Doesn't bother me.
I couldn't do that. I have to. I get tongue-tied, and I worry about what I say.
But you prepare just like you would prepare for your acting role. I prepare, I practice.
And it's improv.
We're pretending we're really not this way.
It's improv.
It's improv. I make jokes, I crack jokes, I use bad analogies.
Right.
Students look at me like, what the hell are you talking about? Like, well, your homework is go home and watch that Golden Girls.
Right.
Watch the Golden Girls, watch this episode, come back, and then you understand what I did.
I'm a professor. I've always said that great teaching is at least 1/3 great acting.
It is.
Yeah, that's right.
Got to hold attention.
That's right.
It is, and and that helped me, and because I did lots of drama in college, and that had to have helped me become a better teacher.
And even as an actor, it helps you in between jobs to keep your craft, because you're still acting. So it helps you with your craft, to practice your craft, to practice it. Even though you're not acting in front of a camera or a stage, you are in front of an audience every single day, and you do have to prepare your lines. So in a way, it is acting. And acting acting like a teacher. I mean, I don't know half the stuff I'm teaching. I'm making it up as I go along anyway. So but they believe it, and I'm like, I just know what's on the test.
They're believing me.
So you can do it.
The whole back thing.
Yeah, and then it's, you know, you have a heckler or two in the audience, you know. It's
Yeah.
Tough audience.
So you can do it.
The students are picking their nose. And,
Yeah, or they're on their phones or whatever.
Right,
or,
oh,
you
God,
know,
no.
they're Googling to make sure that what you're saying is true.
Oh, well, see, now I quit teaching before it got to that point when they could check me. It's like, oh, I'd have been in such trouble.
There's one in every class.
Because talk about improv. Oh, I just make stuff up.
Yeah, well,
Listen, I've done improv for years. I started with a teacher who began the groundlings. And so worked at the groundlings. Improv, I think every person in this room should take improv. Because people say, oh, I can't act. It's not acting. It is thinking without, well, it's doing without thinking. No, that doesn't make sense. It's just saying yes. It's not stopping a conversation. It's continuing the conversation. And you can be funny, you can do whatever, you can do, you know, voices, you can do whatever keeps it going.
That's
teaching. Yeah,
That's
that's teaching. Exactly.
See, I need you
You're uninhibited. when
Yeah,
you're doing it.
exactly.
And that's why Marlon Brando didn't like to memorize his
Yes,
lines.
yes.
He wanted them on cue cards as if he was seeing them for the first time. Because he said in a normal conversation, you don't know what you're going to say until you say it most of the time.
That's absolutely
And
right.
that's why, you know, and people made fun of him at being not a professional. He was a very good professional because of that, because he wanted what the camera caught to record real life, not
That's why the cat.
not a scripted thing. Oh, the cat! I love the cat.
The
cat.
Oh, yes.
He found
Yes.
it. He found it
Yes.
in the studio and just grabbed it and
Yeah.
sat down and started doing
And the orange,
scene.
and the
then-
orange thing
yeah,
too.
and they were all like, "Where did the cat come from?" And he
That's
was like,
right.
"A cat on the Paramount lot." He was just playing.
Well, there's a great story about him, and on the waterfront,
Oh,
where
love
he's
that
supposed to be beginning romance with Eva Marie Saint, and they're walking along just talking, and she has gloves, and she's I think taking them off, and she dropped it by mistake. Well, before the director could say cut, he picked up the glove and tried to put it on. And I mean, it's so sensual, and it speaks, you know, and behavior speaks, you know, everything
it was
in times.
normal.
And that was all improv. And so, as an actor, you try not to be an actor. You try and just, like Meisner, Sandy Meisner was a great teacher, said, listening, you listen. And you can memorize your line, and you do, you work really hard, you know your lines backwards and forwards, but it's when you get on set or when you get on the stage is when it comes alive, because you start listening and you're taking from the other person, and it all morphs into something so true and interesting, and you can hear it in the audience. You're not supposed to go break that fourth wall, but there are times when you know that everybody's with you. And that is, for me, the height and beauty of acting, because you know that they're understanding, you're communicating, and what you're doing is being understood and taken in by the audience. I love acting.
Just like in a classroom. That's exactly what it's like to be a teacher whenever
Yes.
you sing. It's exactly
You see them.
Yes.
You see the wheels.
I call
turning.
light bulbs go off.
Yeah, exactly.
You connect, you're like, just like you do with an audience.
It's the difference between a good teacher and a teacher that makes you want to quit school.
Exactly. Exactly.
And acting is
And I had too many of those.
Oh, well, people would line up for my father's class because, I mean, he taught people to be PhDs in philosophy, and he would have, and people loved him. He would have his pipe, he would clean it, he would smoke it, sometimes clean it, talking, asking the right questions, but he had a bust of a dog, looked like a dog man, and a chain around his neck, and he
I liked that already.
And he called it Hair Professor Son of a Bitch. and he when he would give his exams, he would say, Hair Professor Son of a Bitch is giving this, not I. And everyone would laugh, but he would have people who were underprivileged come to the house, and he would work with them. And that to me always was so. It taught me so many lessons that you live life, and sometimes you don't get the lesson that it's where you bring other people in, and when he died, I'll never forget that how my mother, we were in the hospital room, and my mother put her forehead to his forehead, because I said, Mom, it's time, because his blood pressure was going up and down, and I'd been told that was an indication. And she looked up in wonder, and I said, what happened? And she said, I just saw his life go through my whole being, my whole head, and that would be my father. He didn't say much, but man, he spoke in so many other ways, and his students understood that, and his students loved him for that. So, teaching. The most important.
Fourth grade?
My mother taught fourth grade.
Was it always fourth grade, or did she do other?
Always fourth grade.
Love fourth grade.
Oh,
Fourth
really?
grade was awesome.
Yeah, it's really
brave.
Yeah.
Now,
yeah.
fourth grade's great because they're babies before that. Fourth grade, all of a sudden, it's starting to click. And they're understanding things. And then they turn fifth grade and turn into a bunch of little jerks. Fourth grade's perfect. It's like when you teach middle school. Sixth grade, babies. Eighth grade, jerks. Seventh grade, love those guys. They're great. You're one of those.
Seventh grade.
You either like seventh grade or you hate them.
And in eighth grade, they're grown up because they're ready to go to high school. All of a sudden, they're people again.
That's right. I'm ready for them to go.
Yeah.
Give me my seventh graders and my fourth graders.
That's why I teach college level.
Oh. Well, I remember when my daughter was in middle school, and I talked to one of the teachers, and I said, I don't quite understand. And he said, they're all in Twilight Zone.
It's the
Hormones.
Yeah, and I said, oh, now I get it. Twilight Zone, oh yeah.
Oh, were you in any episodes of Twilight?
No, but I would have loved it. That's one of my favorite shows.
Great.
It
Yeah,
still is.
when I watched the little episode of Bill Mooney trying to shoot you and you gave him candy and shut him up, that episode said directed by Alfred Hitchcock.
Yeah.
Was that right?
Oh,
He
yeah.
actually directed that?
Oh yeah.
Wow. How was he as a director?
He said almost nothing, except if he did want to say something, he'd call you over and then whisper to you. He did not do that to me, but I was maybe this far away from him, and I sat just staring at him. And he was dressed in all black, but black suit, a white shirt, black tie, and sort of like an Undertaker. But he storyboarded everything. And so he knew exactly what he wanted to do. So there was very little directing and of anyone on the set.
Do you like that better, or do you like somebody who's telling you?
Oh, I don't care. I work with all different directors. Everybody has a different style.
I'm glad I asked that because I thought that was a lie. I'm like, no, the TV series was named after him. He just got that credit. So that's cool. I didn't know he really did direct it.
Yeah, he directed a couple of episodes a year, and I was fortunate enough to be one of them. And I had done one episode previously, but not directed by him, but on Alfred Hitchcock Presents. So he said, I want that girl. And I played the Jiffy Snack girl.
Yep.
Billy on the shot, so, yeah.
They were evidently good snacks because Bill kept the bullets in the guns.
That's right. Yeah.
Now, you were in a couple of Western shows, too.
Oh, I love
Now, which
Western.
ones? I can't remember which ones.
Well, Savage Sam was one, Walt Disney, and it was a sequel to Old Yeller. But this was a blue tick hound, Savage Sam. And I loved being outside because I had been riding horses almost all my life in Michigan. I mean, you know, since we moved from the city to rural Farmington. And my just great desire was to buy a horse. But I worked at the stables, which my mother was not too happy about, because she wanted me to be a lady, and I was never that. So I was always a tomboy. But I'd earn enough money to clean the hooves and brush the horses down, and I also had a little newspaper for the community, and I'd get quarter here and a quarter there, and I saved up like $35, which was not enough for a horse. So I spent that on candy. I figured that was it. But so being on a Western was my dream. And I got to ride horses and work with actors who played Indians, but they were stunt people. And there was one stunt guy that was just amazing. What was his name? I knew his name. But he taught me how to, I would ride, and he taught me how, he'd lift me up and throw me behind him on the back of the horse. I mean, things like that. And I know that the director was going, oh my God, she's going to get hurt, she's going to get hurt. But I said, leave me alone. And every, the stunt guys were tough. And they were mostly cowboys. And they would come in on Monday after a weekend of drinking. And they were bruised, they were bandaged up. They would get into bar fights. I said, what would happen? Oh, yeah, it's done. Well, Joe, he said something I didn't like about my, girlfriend here. Yeah. Anyway, I just loved working with them and just being outside.
Now, you went down that road to Savage Sam. And so one of my questions for tomorrow that I'm just going to go ahead and throw out there, because you already answered it about being able to ride a horse. Now, you know how these Hollywood magazines are, where they try to make up stories that was going on. There was one that dropped a story in like 67 or something about Lee Majors giving you horseback riding lessons. And I'm like, that sounds like a story that's made up just to cause trouble. And you just answered, you had already been riding horses for a decade, so obviously Lee Majors wasn't giving you horse riding lessons. No. But you did know.
You were giving him.
Oh, yes. I was giving, yes. I would do things, articles like with Fabian, this is Fabian's girlfriend at the beach, and blah, 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 blah. And no.
And they just made stuff up.
Oh, they just made stuff. Yeah. It was
I knew that's what it was, but I just wanted to check, because...
Well, Lee Majors and I ended up working in Korea,
That's right. In the 90s, right?
In the 90s, yeah. And I played his wife. And Lee, well, I'm not telling tales out of school when I say he was a heavy drinker. And tipped a bit at night. And I couldn't believe, I said, how can he drink, be drinking so much and then get up in the morning and work? His secret was he slept very little, got up, saunaed like for an hour. He sweated it all out, and he was on set. He was such a good worker, and we got along really well. We did karaoke. Oh Lord, he was fun. He was fun to work with.
Well, we were at some show, and he was supposed to sign autographs.
Yeah.
And he didn't show up. And there was a line. It was a pretty big show, and it's like, where is he? They sent a teenager to pick him up from the airport, and the teenager got into a wreck, and it broke his arm.
No.
He showed up, and is waving to everybody, smiling. I'm like, he's on some good drugs. He signed autographs for like 6 hours.
Yeah.
He made sure that everybody, I'm like, it broke his arm, and he just keeps going. He really is a $6 million man. Of course, I wanted a picture of it. I wanted his autograph as Heath, but he didn't have any of those. It was all Colt Seavers and $6 Million Man. But it's nice to know that he was that way.
My daughter called him the $6 man. No, $6 million.
It's that time in it, Anthony. I knew when Anthony walked in the door, I'm like,
Oh, wait, Ron.
we're
Ron.
going over. Ron?
Wait, Ron was supposed to ask some questions.
Go.
We're out of time. Does anybody out here have a question they want to ask?
I do, and it's related to Lost in Space. I'm wondering what you think of the two iterations since the original in '66. The movie in 2000, and then the new series that just ended.
Yeah. Well,
And there was the third one that never made it past the pilot.
Robinsons.
right. Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
John Woo, I think,
Yeah.
or somebody was doing. Yeah.
Well, they certainly weren't our show. They were, I think, they wanted to represent what the era was like at the time, and they were just a little bit dark, darker than I thought they should be, and I mean, I know that people saw it and would say, no, it's not Lost in Space. But I think they were good for what they were, and I thought the series was good. I was supposed to be in the third season, but Kevin Burns died, who had been pushing for me to be in it, and he actually gave me the name well, his mother was Joanne, and so it was Joanne Williams, and named after Guy Williams. And but the COVID shut down the Canadian borders. They were filming in Canada, so that didn't happen. I was really disappointed because I wanted to do it for Kevin, because I knew he had passed away, but I knew that he would have driven me across the border somehow at midnight to get me there, because he for my birthday he had given me a party, and the main gift that he gave me was the Lost in Space, huge Lost in Space book, and in the inscription was that you're going to be in the third season of the Lost in Space, you know. I thought it was a good series. I liked the little boy. I'm not so sure I liked the robot. In fact, on the Stephen Colbert show one night, he made a joke about our robot, the B9, and the new iteration, and he said, "I think this one's too sexy for, you know." It's not the same.
It was too human looking.
Oh, it was too human and sexy.
Yeah, it was too.
Yeah.
It was just.
Yeah.
From an alien race.
Yeah, but I would have loved to have been. Yeah, I was to be the mother, you know, to June. I mean, to the mother, Maureen. Thank you, Maureen's character. But you know, I'm glad that they tried. I'm glad that Akiva Goldsmith, who won an Oscar for A Beautiful Mind, wrote the movie. You know, I'm proud of all of that. But you know, I wish that Gary Oldman. I wish that he had been given more opportunity to have been Dr. Smith as the Dr. Smith we know, because Gary Oldman is funny. He's loose. You know, he can do anything.
He can. He really can.
He can do anything. And one of my favorite actors. And if they had written him, then everything else would have fallen into place, I think. So I think we have to go.
You know,
Yeah,
I was supposed to be there with you in Canada when you filmed that scene.
Oh.
Kevin, I was talking to Kevin. It was right after he told you that you were going to be in it, and I was the only other one outside of your group that knew that you were going to be in it. And of course, everything he told me was secrecy.
Yeah.
And then he said, "Do you have a passport?"
Oh.
And I said, "No, I don't." He said, "You better go get one."
Oh my gosh.
Because he was going to bring. He wanted me to be there when you did that scene.
Oh wow.
That'd have been cool.